Hey there, everybody. I hope that you're having a good day slash night. It is time to play some NES. I have my NES hoodie on here. It is much colder here in southern New England today than it was yesterday. It is in the teens outside, so it's pretty chilly. We're going to play some Top Gun tonight, a game that came to prominence on YouTube thanks to James Rolfe as the angry Nintendo nerd, as he kind of went nuts about this game, complaining about not being able to land the plane and about how simple it was. And James's reviews, of course, are tongue-in-cheek. They're satire. That's not the kind of game player that he is. He knows a little bit more about games than that. But the over-the-top, angry, swearing, always upset about something game nerd really kind of helped draw more attention to this game after it kind of was in and out of people's consciousness for a while. Of course, this is based on the 1986 movie of the same name, and builds upon that license. We're going to go ahead and start to play here, and I'll tell you about my experience with the game as well as point out some other things here in just a minute. So, the first thing about this game that I love is the F-14 on the carrier deck, firing up the engines ready to go before it tells you via a kind of sort of mission briefing what's going on here. So you're training for the next mission here. The missile selection is not a big deal for their first mission, and when James talks about the fact that it doesn't matter how powerful the missiles are because you don't really use them all that much, that's kind of right, but kind of not. For this particular mission, it is. So I'm just going to go ahead and select the 40. And then we're on the aircraft carrier deck, and we're waiting for the signal to take off. Thankfully, everything is automated, so we just get to watch as the plane takes off, the nose goes up, and we climb to an altitude well over 10,000 feet to 18,944 feet for some reason. And here we go. So you can see the clouds. James pointed out that some of the cloud designs were like cotton balls. But again, it's 1987. We're 2 years into the NES era, so the games weren't going to be perfect looking. I never really had an issue with it. So my experience with this game, well, I first played this in 1988, actually. I went to this kid's house who was also named Pete. I met him through a mutual friend named Chris, and I would stay at Chris's house for Christmas vacation and April vacation and part of summer vacation. Um, and Chris had his own NES, but Pete had more games. So playing at his house in '88 during Christmas vacation, so like he got it during like Christmas of '87, I guess. Um, I remember just being blown away by the fact A, there was a Top Gun game, and B, that it just looked neat looking at the planes flying at you and seeing a plane trying to tailing you, kind of like we would see in the movie with the lock-ons. It wasn't quite a simulation, but it was fine for what it was, I thought. And I still think to this day it is fine. It is not the best game by any stretch, and if you ask me to pick between this and say like Ace Combat, I would take Ace Combat any day. But this still gets the point across. It is fun to play, and despite some complaints about landing, which we'll get to in a little bit, I think it's good. Maybe a little bit on the simple side. Maybe some of the graphics could be cleaner, but again, you have to consider the time frame and the fact that the NES people, development teams, were still learning about the hardware and what it could do. What I remember about this game too, when I first played it, was I was using an NES Advantage, which I'm not using here. I never liked the NES Advantage, and I know that that's strange, but I never really liked it because it felt so large and unwieldy. It was like an arcade joystick, which is fine, but I've always been happier with a smaller controller in my hand. That may go back to my experience with the Atari 2600. What do we have? Oh, where's the plane? Here we go. So I think we're getting ready to land. No, not yet. Shortly. Coming up here, though, because we're almost out of fuel. So the landing sequence, which is the big thing that James complains about, again, tongue-in-cheek in his video. He always talks about the fact that you're getting directions on your HUD display: up, up, left, left, down, down, and speed up, speed down. If you look at the altimeter or the altitude and speed, it tells you where you need to be. So it's important to stay in those parameters, and you have to also be centered, right? I think I'm good. I think I'm good. Let's see if I can actually land the plane or if I'm going to look bad. There we go. I don't think I overshot it. Landed the plane first time. No problem. Got 10,000 points. I have 18,700. I didn't lose any lives, and we're on to mission 2, which is destroying an enemy aircraft carrier. This is where the game starts to get harder. So James is right about this. Now here, because there is an enemy at the end of the stage, I do take missiles that are stronger because you want to eliminate the enemy at the end faster. So I take the T-22s. Now, here, there are two different ways you can go. You can either deal with enemy aircraft in the skies high up, or you can stay closer to the ground and deal with enemy battleships and cruisers. I don't recommend the bottom. I recommend staying up top around 30,000 feet. And the reason for that is because missiles kill you, which you almost saw there. Missiles, unless you shoot them down, they're insta kills. And you don't want to be dealing with those because the battleships and the cruisers will shoot 3 missiles at you at a time. And yeah, you don't want to mess with that because you can't shoot down 3 missiles at a time. It's just not possible. So my strategy for stage 2 is just to deal with the aircraft up above. Even if you don't get a lot of points, it really doesn't matter. And you want to refrain from using your missiles because you're using more powerful ones here. So I'm just using my guns, taking down what aircraft I can, trying to look out for bullets, and shooting down any missiles that may come my way because there's only one on the screen at a time. It's tempting to want to go for points here and to pick off aircraft, which are the yellow dots on the radar below, whereas the carriers and battleships are the circles, like the transparent circles. But stay away from those. It's just, that's my advice. Don't even bother keeping level. Just keep climbing. Notice that the altitude doesn't go up anymore. 30,000 feet is as high as you go. The only thing you have to worry about is getting bogeys off your tail when they try and achieve lock on. That's it. Now, the other thing that this stage introduces, level or mission 2, is mid-air refueling. Now, mid-air refueling does not repair your aircraft, so again, it's important if you want to try and conserve lives for tougher stages, you avoid getting struck by bullet fire as much as you possibly can. But notice, by just continually climbing, I really don't have very many aircraft to worry about. I am literally flying above them as they fly underneath me. As we take a look at the fuel gauge, we have 4 ticks left. I think we have like 2 ticks left before the auto refueler kicks in, and we have to deal with that sequence. We do have a bogey on my tail. Clearing a bogey on a tail is simple as going hard to one side and then going just as hard to the other side. So hard right and then hard left, or hard left and then hard right. So I think we have one more tick of fuel left before we do refueling. Refueling, I think, is a little bit easier than landing, but maybe that's just me. Oh. We do have planes to worry about, which is kind of cheating. And here we go. So note how the radar kind of zooms in. Here comes the refueling tanker. You're going to see the refueling nozzle kind of drift toward you. And you have to look at your HUD again. and you have to try and get the refueling nozzle right in the center. There we go. Not hard. I do think that a lot of what James Rolfe did in his videos, he purposely oversold some things. I don't think that was necessarily his experience that he could never refuel or never land the plane. I just think for comedic's sake or for comedy's sake, it looks better if he just kind of messes around with it a little bit and shows that he's struggling with it. But for whatever reason, the internet has adopted this opinion over the years that it's impossible to do these things, and it's just that's not valid. Now I gotta watch out for that missile. Jeez. Because there are 5 missions and you only have 2 ships in reserve, you do not want to be losing ships early here. You don't want to be losing aircraft because you're going to need them later. James also complains, and I think it's a valid complaint, is it's awful quiet. Aside from your engine and gunfire or missile fire, there's nothing going on. Tries to be more simulation aspected, but I think that's one of the things that makes the Ace Combat games, for example, so good, is that you have that music in the background, that great epic music, and you also have a lot of radio chatter, which you couldn't do in this game because voice samples would take up a lot of memory. But you have that voice chatter back and forth that makes you feel immersed in the whole experience. So this game, it's a little bit, it pairs back on a lot of sound effects, with the exception of at the end of each stage. But that's okay. I really don't have an issue with that. So again, it's been quiet. I do have aircraft that occasionally are a pain, and we do have a bogey that will take off there. Not a problem. And we're just waiting until we get to the aircraft carrier. And our first boss battle of the game, here we go. Now we have to descend from 30,000 feet a lot closer to sea level so that we can do a missile/bombing run. And this is where you just want to empty your missile base while avoiding other aircraft. Now, even if you wind up, your missiles wind up hitting other aircraft instead of the carrier, because they're twice as powerful as the 40 pack, it shouldn't take too long to take the carrier down and to move to your next mission. But of course, there's one thing we have to do before that, and we got to worry about the carrier first. Still descending, because again, 30,000 feet. So we drop all the way down to, I believe, less than 5,000 feet. Yep, 4,000. 3984 for some reason. And again, missiles are the problem. And I'm dead. That's not good. Thankfully, I get another shot at it. And I got the carrier, finally. Now, of course, after taking down the aircraft carrier, you have to land the plane again. Now, when I was playing this a few days ago, I had the same issue where I was able to land it the first time, but not the second time. So we got to get to 288. Let's see. Come on, stop. Nice. So another 10,000 points. I only lost one aircraft. And I'm on my way to a high score, maybe. So, mission 3, which is destroy an enemy base. So, we're going from a carrier to a base. Again, we're going to go with the T-22s. And here, if I remember right, we're flying over a desert instead of the water. Same thing applies here as applied in the last mission, though. You have two ways you can go. You can either deal with ground targets or you can deal with air targets. And I'm telling you from experience, you don't want to deal with ground targets because they shoot too many missiles. So there's the desert, but we're not even going to bother with that. We do have to deal with a bunch of Harriers, though, which is not much fun because they love to pepper you with bullets. They do have some missiles, too, but they only fire one at a time. So this is really the first home-based flight sim that I ever played. I guess, unless you consider Activision's Space Shuttle an aircraft game, but that was more a straight simulation, and I wasn't very good at it. In fact, going back and replaying it on like Activision Anthology, I still don't even remember how I made it anywhere in that game because I was terrible at it. So this was really my first flight sim. And then it wouldn't be until like Star Fox, which is definitely more arcade style than simulation, that I would play something similar. Oh boy, gotta get out of there. And then with the PlayStation, it was Air Combat. That's a series that I have enjoyed for a long time, going all the way back to when I first played the game back in 1995. So it has been a long time. I've played just about every Air Combat game or Ace Combat game since. Ace Combat 2, that's not good. Ace Combat 2 still really holds up. Plus the 3 PlayStation 2 Ace Combat games are great. My favorite is Ace Combat 0, which is a bit more divisive. But I love Ace Combat 2. I love the original Ace Combat 4, 5, although 5 can be kind of a pain. 0 as well. I actually just picked up from Amazon, who opened a Bandai Namco clothing store, or there is a Bandai Namco clothing store that opened up. I wound up picking up some Ace Combat gear, which I'm really excited for, and that's not fair. And I'm dead. Darn it. I was really excited to pick those up. Those are coming in next week, and I'm hoping to show those off on Twitter and on TikTok at some point, just to kind of show off the shirts that I've got. So that is a look at Top Gun on the NES. Still a very tough nut to crack, but I do think that James Rolfe's satire kind of soured the internet on this game, and I don't think that that's fair. This is a game I think that with practice you could probably beat in a weekend rental, as long as you're following the proper strategies and getting some practice in. The game, although there's not a lot of music, what music there is good. It looks good, I think, for 1987 standards, and I do think that it's fun to play. So if you have an NES or you're looking for an NES game to play that you haven't visited in a while, I do recommend checking this one out. I do think that you'll have more fun with it if you clear your expectations and just go in fresh. As always, thanks for watching this episode of Pete Plays here on the YouTube channel. Look for more uploads really soon. Until the next time, my friends, take care of yourselves and each other.